Britain is a hotspot for homegrown Islamist terrorist sympathisers. 1 in 10 18 to 24-year-olds support Hamas. 16% believe the massacre on October the 7th was justified. 32% of British Muslims favour the implementation of Sharia law, reportedly. British Muslims as a whole are more likely to have a positive than negative view of Hamas. Among the younger generation, it's those that were born here who are the most extreme. Integration appears to have failed. 2 days before the anniversary of Hamas terrorists burning, raping, torturing and murdering men, women, children and babies, we had this on the streets of London. There's a man there, if you look very closely, dressed as a parachutist, arrested on suspicion of supporting a prescribed terror group. Hamas terrorists, of course, parachuted into Israel, didn't they? We've got a poster here saying, "I love Hezbollah," a prescribed terror group. We've got a lady saying Hamas are freedom fighters and calling for Israel supporters, it seems, to just kill themselves. And we also, we can play you that clip now, I think.
International law, Hamas are not terrorists. Why don't you dig a big hole and jump?
Yeah. We have open racism against Jewish people. A warning here now, you may hear some language that you could find offensive.
Do you know where the masjids are? Obviously saying to me, I'm going to put dustbin together. You thought that you were talking about the nice ones. Baby killers.
Yeah. We have another person here just shouting at Jews. They're freedom fighters and they will finish you all off, he says, about Hamas. We have open support for Hezbollah now, people appearing to call for Israelis to be burned.
Hezbollah, make us proud!
Burn the settlers to the ground!
Hezbollah, make us proud!
Burn the settlers to the ground!
And they appear to be mocking Jewish people's hair. Yeah, so that's in relation to Jews having their heads shaved during the Holocaust, apparently, so, yeah. We had an evil old man destroying a memorial to the October 7th victims in Brighton, which is just like a weird thing to do, isn't it, really? There you go, there's the memorial to the people who actually died. So this isn't, you know, something outside the Israeli embassy or anything like this. This is people who died, actually were killed, slaughtered, and he just took it upon himself to just destroy it. I mean, why? Why would you do that? I mean, is that not open anti-Semitism? Can you imagine doing that? Just waking up one morning and thinking, what are you going to do today? I'm going to go and desecrate that memorial to people who died in a massacre. Yeah. The Met made 17 arrests. I mean, they could have clearly arrested loads more people. All on one day, that was. That whole thing, everything I brought you there was one day. It's probably within a few hours of each other. The charity sector has piped up. Amnesty are doing glossy promotional videos, which many people feel appear to justify terrorist action against Israel.
Don't let anyone tell you this all started on the 7th of October 2023. 76 years ago, my own family were displaced during the Nakba of 1948, when more than 700,000 Palestinians became refugees.
It's all backed up, of course, by useful idiot himself, Humza Yousaf, who is facing a probe into £250,000 worth of donations made to a Gaza aid agency while members of his family were stuck in the war zone. He denies any wrongdoing, but the Scottish Government is conducting a review of the processes involved.
So we say here, enough is enough. Issue the arrest warrant for Netanyahu, get him on trial, and let's hold him to account.
There are Middle Eastern countries that ban public support for Hamas and Hezbollah and who refuse to take refugees from Gaza because they think that they might be terrorists. But right here, in Britain, support for Hamas is growing among young people. Please tell me again how multiculturalism has enriched all of our lives. Let's get the thoughts of my panel. We've got Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, journalist and broadcaster Benjamin Butterworth, and the former chairman of the Conservative Party, Sir Jake Berry. Carol, you look at that there. We've got support for a prescribed terror group rising amongst homegrown British-born, 18 to 24-year-olds. What's going on?
You know, it shocks me to my core. It makes me sick to my stomach, you know. These kids, these that are supporting Hamas and Hezbollah, you know, they've never been near a war in their life. They've never suffered one jot in their pampered little lives. And yet they're behaving like this. You know, they haven't seen the footage that many journos have of parents being shot in front of their kids on October the 7th, of kids being shot in front of their parents, of the girls who were raped and mutilated and have their faces shot off by these groups that they say are freedom fighters. And it makes me sick to my stomach that kids are actually taking the side of the people who did this. God help them if we ever get into a situation where they are subject to that or their loved ones are subject to that. And it's shocking to me, the lack of ignorance that we're seeing. And it's shocking what we saw on the streets at the weekend. But that's not the weekend. We've seen it week after week after week. And the cops should be ashamed of themselves. The Met Police said they would not put up with anything this weekend that showed support for terrorist groups. And we've just seen it on the film, multiple examples of that.
I mean, look, if anyone pitched the idea of having an event when you said at some point during that, well, look, I can guarantee that there'll be a bit of racism here. I can guarantee that there'll be a bit of support for terrorist groups. No one in their right minds would go, well, yeah, obviously that event needs to take place every other weekend in the capital city. But alas, that's where we are.
Who'd be a Jew in this country today? Seriously.
Does this point to a bigger problem, though? You know, has multiculturalism and integration failed? We've got 18 to 24-year-olds now. 1 in 10 of them appear to support Hamas.
Well, look, if you look at those figures, absolutely, it has failed. What I find so depressing about this is the prevalence of these views on university campuses here in the UK, being promoted by people who are some of the thought leaders, the university professors, students, really intelligent young people who've done well in their A-levels, have gone to some of our top universities. I cannot understand how they have been duped into supporting these terrorism organisations. And it's also really depressing that particularly young Jewish people here in the United Kingdom feel unsafe in some of our leading academic institutions. What on earth has happened to Britain when we will tolerate this on our streets? And finally, any government minister, anyone in the Home Office, any chief constable in the UK who says that we don't have two-tier policing in this country should watch this show tonight, because it's absolutely clear what took place on the streets of London is a disgrace, and the Metropolitan Police stood by and let it happen.
Benjamin, look, I am very aware of your views on this. You've got a lapel badge there as well, which is the Israeli flag and the gay pride flag, I believe. Just to try to create maybe some point of difference on this, do you think it's unfair for me to say and use those incidents there as evidence that multiculturalism in Britain has failed?
Well, most of these people aren't even from that part of the world, and even the ones where their families are, these tend to be young, so they're born in this country. So I don't think it's about multiculturalism. You know, it strikes me that last Friday was 88 years since the Cable Street riots, when working-class Londoners stood up to defend Jewish people being harassed by the British Union of Fascists. And 24 hours later, in 2024, you have all these people coming out to harass Jews and be guilty of anti-Semitism. You know, that is a depressing reflection. And I think a lot of people who are on the left, or liberal, as I am, want to see things in a simple binary of oppressed and oppressor. And they think this plays into that, when it is so much more complicated. And Carol mentioned it, but I'm one of those handful of journalists who's seen the full footage, that most of it filmed on GoPros by Hamas terrorists themselves as propaganda. And, you know, I've seen the blackened, charred babies and the beheaded adults and the Muslims that they killed, that they knew were Muslims. They didn't care. These people are utterly barbarous. And the reason why I have this lapel badge on, and the reason why I don't take that view is because some of those people on those marches would be the very first that they would shoot down, given the chance.
One of those girls who was raped and murdered on that day, not one of them was in a fit state to be shown to their parents, because their bodies on the street, bits of their brains were being back into their heads by onlookers, so their parents wouldn't have to see it. And yet we have kids who think that's an OK thing to do. And you know what shocks me is today, the BBC today mentioned about the restarting, it was the the anniversary of the restarting of the Middle East war. Not once did they mention October the 7th or the massacre. Not
the
once.
massacre, yeah.
No, they didn't mention the massacre. I mean, shocking. And we have huge sections of our media in this country who are clearly on one side. And it shocks me to my core that the misreporting, the misinformation.
And I think you get a balanced view, a more balanced view on this programme, which talks about, there's good and bad on both sides. But to pick up, I absolutely agree with Benjamin. There is, Israel was giving asylum to people from Gaza who were gay because Hamas were murdering them.
Yeah.
And if you think about these young people on the streets who want to live in a liberal country where people are gay without fear of violence, where people can go to music festivals and not be killed, they are supporting the absolute opposite of that.
Just to quickly say, I think the BBC would obviously deny that they are pro-Hamas.
Well, they can do.
Yeah. Just on it, can we play the tape forward a bit, Jake? Because if I look now at the makeup of Britain and the overt, quite fanatic at times support of prescribed terrorist organisations on the streets of Britain, to the point where people feel so comfortable that apparently some bloke can come up dressed as a parachutist to an event 2 days before the anniversary of that massacre there. This problem only gets worse in Britain, doesn't it, with the change that we're seeing in society now?
Well, unless we start to treat these crimes seriously and arrest people. Because if you enable people on one side of the argument, and we've heard about this two-tier Britain, on one side, quite rightly, people who went and rioted in the summer were arrested and dealt with very severely. But there are these pro-Palestinian marches where people do very offensive things. Actually supporting a terrorist organisation in the UK is a crime. Why are the police not taking action? He was arrested.
Are they more scared of one community than another, Benjamin, do you think?
Well, the argument they put is that it's better to arrest them with the intelligence afterwards. But you know what? If I went on a protest and there were a few people stood next to me who made anti-black racist remarks, I wouldn't go back next Saturday.
Go home.
Exactly.
And yet we've had a year.
Exactly.
And the French police have been very strong on this. They have banned marches that promote anti-Semitism. Why haven't we been able to do that yet?
See the way that the police, there's some footage online, the way that some of the police officers
just standing there with their arms folded.
Some of them in Germany, the way they deal with this, they don't mess about. You don't mess with the German police, and word gets around. But anyway, right, thank you very much. Good start to the hour. It's time now, in a massive gear change, for the Great British Giveaway. Your chance to win the equivalent